So let's generate our motivation and recall that ignorance is the source of all of our own personal suffering and misery, as well as the source of all the confusion and problems in the world. So it's that misconception, that incorrect grasping, that wrong consciousness, that everything can be traced back to. And it lies in our mind, not in the environment or the people around us. So while ignorance is in our mind stream, there won't be lasting peace. But the good thing about ignorance is that since it's based on wrong conception, wrong consciousness, it can be eliminated by the mind that has wisdom, that sees things correctly, that sees things as they actually are. So even though we may not have that wisdom at present, we can be confident that it's possible to gain it, and that it's possible to overcome ignorance, the afflictions that stem from it, and the polluted karma that the afflictions create. So let's rejoice that we've met the path, that we have the opportunity to practice, that ignorance is not embedded in the very nature of our mind. And so as we generate wisdom, we can chip away at that ignorance and eventually completely remove it. And so let's make that, doing that, our life's work, because that's something that will really endure for a long time. And especially if we do it so that we can be of greater benefit to other living beings, then meditating on wisdom, overcoming ignorance becomes incredibly valuable for ourselves and all others. So let's generate the intention to do just that. Okay, so there was a question about doubt. Yeah, that when we talk about doubt among the seven types of awareness, when we talk about doubt as one of the 6 root afflictions, it usually just says doubt. Yeah, but the meaning is deluded doubt. But when they explain what doubt is, they usually talk about 3 kinds of doubt. The deluded doubt inclined towards the wrong conclusion, the deluded doubt that's half-half, or the doubt, they don't call it deluded for the second one, the doubt that's half-half, maybe yes, maybe no, and then the doubt that's inclined towards the right conclusion. So somebody said, well, they asked, well, in the 7 ways of knowing and the 6 root afflictions, it says doubt, it means deluded doubt. What happened to the other 2 kinds of doubt? They seem to have gotten lost. We have to remember that none of those lists are exhaustive of all the mental states or of all the mental factors. So we might talk about 7 types of awareness, but there's many more than 7 types. They just pick those 7 out to because they're important ones, so that we can see how we go from a wrong consciousness to a direct perceiver of reality. So we start out with the wrong consciousness, we go to deluded doubt. Then in between, of course, we go to the doubt in the middle and the doubt inclined towards the right. But they aren't specified separately. But, we go from deluded doubt to correct assumption, correct assumers, from there to inference. But as we see, there's a big difference between, there's many stages to go through to go from a correct assumer to an inference. Yeah, many stages, but they aren't all mentioned as separate awarenesses. Similarly, once we get an inference, then there's going to be many stages before we go to a direct perceiver, in this case of, let's say, impermanence or of selflessness, of emptiness. Okay? So it's just mentioning the big markers. It's not exhaustive of everything. Similar with the root afflictions, it says it lists doubt as one of the root ones. Yeah, that doubt is the deluded doubt that's inclined towards the wrong one. They don't include the other 2 in the 6 root afflictions because they aren't root. Root afflictions means that they're the root of all the other afflictions. And they aren't included in the auxiliary afflictions because they aren't totally afflicted either. Okay, so there's many other mental factors that are not mentioned in those 51. Yeah, so just remember that they're pointing out the important ones. We may think there's others that are important that they don't mention. Like many people in the West say, well, what about fear? What about anxiety? Those are important mental factors that people here suffer from, but we don't find them listed in the 81, okay? But, among the 84,000, I'm sure they're there. But, and you can see touches of them in the mental factors that are mentioned, I think attachment has a lot to do with anxiety and fear, and then anxiety and fear often they are the predecessors to anger, okay, or the predecessor to laziness. Laziness includes being discouraged and depressed. So so just remember they aren't exhaustive lists, okay. Then, back to Prasangika's unique view of reliable cognizers. So if you weren't, if you had studied Dharmakirti before, then this next session, you're just scratching your head. Because it's like, I studied Dharmakirti, I learned it this way. This is wrong. Okay. If you didn't study Dharmakirti before and you first learned this, then it sounds okay, because you didn't have another idea in your mind before. It's like when we come to learning emptiness, if you don't study tenets, then the teachers usually tell us first about the Prasangika view, and that sounds quite okay, But if you study tenets, then it's like, oh, Vaibhasika and Satantrika, they don't sound all that bad, because they kind of correspond to what I see already. There is an objective world out there, and it's just a thing of getting rid of the wrong notion of myself. But the world is, it's out there, it's okay, it's stable. So if you learn that first, then when you ascend and you start to question the views of the lower schools, by the time you get to Prasangika, and it's like everything exists by mere conception and designation, you go, wait a minute, I'm sure there's a world out there. And look, the Vaibhasikas and the Siddhantikas and all these other ones say that. Yeah. Okay. So, just to give you a heads up, in case you've studied things and then when you read that, it's all wrong. Okay. So, the Prasangika's presentation of reliable cognizers has several distinctive features that differentiate it from the presentation of the Svatantrikas and other lower tenet systems schools. So don't confuse the Sautantrikas with the Svatantrikas. Okay? So these differences principally center on the Prasangika's rejection of inherent or true existence. Yeah. So it's very interesting. As soon as you change the object of negation in a tenet system, then so many other things change. How you assert the paths and stages, how you assert, the two truths. So much changes because of that. And so, we have to look at all the aspects. Here we're just looking at some of the epistemological changes that happen. The lower tenet systems say that reliable cognizers and their comprehended objects exist inherently, whereas Prasangikas assert that they are established independence on each other. Okay, so actually the lower schools view that kind of accords with what we think now. Because doesn't it seem to you like there's your mind here, and there's the object there. And when you have a cognition, your mind has been sitting here, waiting to have an object. The object exists out there, waiting to have somebody perceive it. And then the eye faculty connects them, and there's contact, and voila, there's a cognizer. Okay? And that's how it appears to us. Yeah. But things don't really exist that way, because the reliable object and the reliable cognizer depend on each other. Yeah. You can't have a reliable cognizer without having a reliable object. You can't have a reliable object without it being perceived by a reliable cognizer. So they're established in reliance, independence upon each other. It's not like one sitting out there independent and the other sitting here independent, and then they kind of meet each other midway or something. Okay? But they're actually designated and come into being independent on each other, not because they have some kind of inherent essence. So this is a big change. Yeah. So Chandrakirti, he's our Prasangika guy, remember? So he said in his text, Clear Words, when it is that way, it is posited that the aims of the world are realized by the four reliable cognizers. What were the four reliable cognizers we talked about yesterday that Chandrakirti set up? Direct perceivers. Just inferential cognizers? Then there's only two. Okay, then factual inferential cognizers.
Cognizer dependent upon example.
The cognizers dependent on example, and the cognizers rely on authoritative testimony. Okay. So when in that way it is posited that the aims of the world are realized by the four reliable cognizers, those also are established in mutual dependence. Okay, not inherently. When reliable cognizers exist, there are comprehended objects. And when comprehended objects exist, there are reliable cognizers. The two, reliable cognizers and comprehended objects that are inherently established, do not exist at all, period. Okay? So inherently existent things do not exist at all. Yeah. Dependently existent things do exist. People get confused sometimes because usually when you negate inherent existence, then that's followed up by asserting that there is dependent existence. So then, when and people say, okay, that's great, but then when you go back and you say, when you search for the book, with ultimate analysis, there is no book. Then people go, wait a minute. No, we just got done saying there was a conventional book. Now you're saying there's no book. Yeah. No, we're saying when we investigate with and analyze with an ultimate cognizer, there is no book that is found, conventional or ultimate book. But a mind of ultimate analysis is not the mind that would perceive a conventional object anyway. The mind of ultimate analysis could only perceive an inherently existent object, and it doesn't perceive that. Okay? So conventional things, like the book, are not in the purview of the mind of ultimate analysis. Similar to, colors and shape are not in the purview of the auditory consciousness. So just because our auditory consciousness doesn't hear colors and shapes, doesn't mean color and shape don't exist. It's that kind of consciousness cannot perceive them, whether they're inherently existent or conventionally existent. It doesn't matter. Okay? So the mind, it's quite striking, when you're doing ultimate analysis, and you say, you're doing ultimate analysis to search for what this book is. What really is this book? And you don't find anything except the emptiness of the book. You do not find a book at all, because you look all through every single page, the cover, the print, the collection of pages. None of those things are anywhere are you going to find a book. Okay? So it's rather shocking, and it's good that we're shocked. Yeah, when we do ultimate analysis and it feels like so comfortable, then it hasn't had the impact on our mind that it's supposed to have. Okay? So that's why it's often said like this. I remember Zopa Rinpoche, when he was teaching one time, he would say, there is no book in this object, but there is a book on the table. Okay? So there is no book in here. Absolutely, there is no book. Okay? We still look at it and go, well, yeah, you're just saying that, but I'm sure there's a book here. No, when we analyze, there is no book. You do not find a book in this object. But you can find a book on the table. Okay? When we're saying there's no book in the object, we're doing ultimate analysis. When we're saying there is a book on the table, we're just doing conventional appearances. So those two consciousnesses that perceive those two things are different consciousnesses. Okay? The conventional consciousness cannot perceive the ultimate mode of existence. Only in the Buddha can it do this. And the ultimate mind of ultimate analysis cannot perceive the conventional existence. Okay? But I think it's very helpful to look at it and go, there's no book here. Yeah? Because that shakes us up a little bit. Otherwise, well, yeah, there's no book here, but conventionally there's a book. Then that doesn't change our perception of it at all. You know, again, we have a wise mouth, but our mind is not getting it. Yeah.
Would we say there's a causal dependence between the reliable cognizer and the reliable object?
No. Well, not when you're saying reliable cognizer and reliable object. When you're talking about a cognizer coming into existence, yes, the object is a cause for that cognizer to arise. But when we're establishing reliable cognizers and reliable objects, there isn't a causal relationship. It's a mutually dependent relationship. Okay? It's like when you say the plant grew from the seed, you know, the result depends on the cause, then that would be a causal relationship in that example. But when you're establishing the existence of a cause and of effect, they're established in mutual dependence, not causal dependence. Okay? I think we talk about the first three kinds of dependence in Volume 1 at the beginning. I think His Holiness puts that in right at the beginning. Yeah. The existence of reliable cognizers and reliable objects is established in dependence on each other. There are no objects out there existing in their own right, waiting to be comprehended. Nor are there reliable cognizers existing from their own side without perceiving a comprehended object. Okay, so that's one distinctive feature of Prasangika. A second one is that a reliable cognizer can be mistaken. Then you go, wait a minute. I thought reliable cognizers, no, part of their definition, you know, in Satantrika is a non-mistaken knower free from conceptuality. Now you're telling me they can be mistaken? No. Okay. So here, mistaken has a different meaning. In Satantrika, mistaken means it appears or you know it through the medium of a conceptual appearance. Here, mistaken means it appears to the mind as truly existent or inherently existent. Okay, so the meaning of mistaken differs in the two systems. Veiled truths appear inherently existent to all consciousnesses of sentient beings except Arya's meditative equipoise on emptiness. When a sentient being looks at a table, that table appears to her eye consciousness as inherently existent, even though it isn't. So right from the get-go, according to Prasangikas, our sense consciousnesses are mistaken. They are not perceiving the objects accurately in terms of their ultimate nature. So they're not perceiving all aspects of the object accurately. They are perceiving enough aspects of the object to ascertain what the object is, but they aren't perceiving everything our sense consciousnesses, or even our gross mental consciousness. They aren't perceiving everything about the object. Okay? So when a sentient being looks at a table, that table appears to her eye consciousness as inherently existent, even though it isn't. Our sunglasses. Yeah, we're seeing with sunglasses. This consciousness is mistaken with respect to the appearance of the table. Okay? Still, it is reliable with respect to the main object it cognizes, the table. It gives the person the information she needs to put her cup down. Yeah, that visual consciousness is a reliable cognizer that is non-deceptive with respect to its apprehended object, its main object, in this case the table. At the same time, it is mistaken with respect to its appearing object, a table that appears to exist inherently, although it does not. So when we talk about cognizers, we talk about them having about different objects. Okay? So the appearing object is what is appearing to that, the object that is appearing to that consciousness. Okay? The apprehended object or the engaged object is the main object is what that consciousness is actually apprehending. Okay? So in terms of Prasangika, yeah, for all of our consciousnesses, even valid inferences, direct perceivers, everything for a sentient being that is not a meditative equipoise directly, non-conceptually realizing emptiness, all of those are mistaken in that inherent existence appears to them. Okay? So it's rather shocking to think that all of our perceptions are mistaken. There's something not right in all of them. Yeah, because we think we're perceiving reality, aren't we? Yeah, you woke up this morning, you looked at the clock, everything around you is real. When you look out at the people here, yeah, it looks like everything's real, doesn't it? Yeah, all these people are out there. Their existence does not depend on my mind or anybody else's mind. Yeah, they have their own inherent nature out there. I'm perceiving everything accurately. So when I get mad, my anger is a correct perceiver. Yeah? When I'm attached, my attachment is a correct mind. I know reality. Yeah. So this is our problem. Yeah. That we don't know the ultimate reality. We don't know the reality. And we think what is not reality is reality. Hold on. So this is our problem. Yeah? Okay, and we've seen it this way since beginningless time. We've never had one moment of correct, unmistaken perception that knows the actual mode of existence. So we don't even have any doubt about how things exist. We're just in wrong consciousness, you know? And it's when we start to hear the Dharma teachings that then maybe we start to investigate things and we begin to have some doubt about how things are appearing to us and how we are grasping them. Okay? So that moves us into the deluded doubt. But getting even from wrong consciousness to deluded doubt is difficult. Okay? So that's talking about the ultimate mode of existence. We're missing it totally. Okay? But we have enough knowledge to know that this is a table and that you can put your cup on it. Okay? So that works. Yeah. If we didn't, so according to Prasangikas, we would call that a reliable cognizer. On the conventional level, it's reliable because we know there's a table, we know there's a cup, and you can put the cup on the table. Yeah? A completely wrong consciousness would be thinking this is a pumpkin, and thinking that this is, I don't know, kind of the back of a aardvark, and you're putting a pumpkin on the back of an aardvark. That would be a completely wrong consciousness. Okay? So, I mean, if you take drugs and you hallucinate, that's what you may see. Right? Yeah? When you have a raging fever, does your mind see things accurately? Yeah? Even when you're really tired, even when you have bad hearing or bad vision, are we seeing things as they are? Yeah. So we have lots of wrong consciousnesses. So it's good. At least we have a reliable one and we know where to put our cup. Okay? So that's good. We got to call that a reliable cognizer on a conventional level. But it does not know the actual reality of the cup or of the table or of us. Okay? Okay. Contrary to Satantrikas, Prasangikas assert that a yogic direct perceiver does not necessarily exist only in the mind stream of Aryas. What? When I studied, mind and all these types of awarenesses, it said that impermanence is known by a yogic direct perceiver. Yeah? And yogic direct perceivers only exist in the mind of Aryas, beings who have seen reality. Now you're telling me that's not true? Yep. Because a yogic direct perceiver, knowing subtle impermanence, you can have that before realizing emptiness. So you can have that before you enter the path of seeing. Yeah. Yeah. So does that give you some comfort? Oh, I can have a yogic direct perceiver. Those are top-notch consciousnesses, even before I realize reality. Oh, that's kind of comforting. Yeah. I'm getting there. But let me tell you, to really to have a subtle impermanence with a yogic direct perceiver, it's a little bit far from where we are right now. Okay. Ordinary beings can have them as well. For example, the yogic direct perceiver apprehending subtle impermanence. This reliable cognizer is mistaken in that subtle impermanence appears truly existent to it, but nevertheless it correctly knows subtle impermanence. Okay. When we're talking here, truly existent, inherently existent, existence from its own side, existent with its own nature, all these terms, according to Prasangika, mean the same thing. Okay? The lower schools may differentiate them, but here we're talking Prasangika. Some people question whether Prasangikas can accept factual inference at all. How can you question that? Saying that the Tibetan word for fact is ngopo. Okay? Ngopo actually means functioning thing, but ngopo in some situations means inherent existence. Okay, so don't think that one word always has the same meaning or even has compatible meanings. Yeah? Ngokpo can mean functioning thing, it can mean inherent existence, okay? So Prasangikas do not agree that Ngokpo implies inherent existence in this context. In other contexts, it does, but not in this one. Okay. They assert that phenomena do not have some fact or independent essence that inheres in them. They refute inherent existence on all phenomena and assert that everything exists by being merely designated, dependent on conventions. Okay. Svatantrikas and below say that direct reliable cognizers must be non-conceptual and must be the first moment of knowing the object. Because remember, the way they etymologize the term pramana, it means prime cognizer, meaning the first moment of something. Prasangikas define a reliable cognizer as a non-deceptive consciousness. It need not be the first moment of that cognizer. Okay, so again, different definition for the same term. Glossing direct as meaning not dependent on a reason, Prasangikas accept both conceptual and non-conceptual direct reliable cognizers. Now, if you're a Satantrika, you faint at this point. How can you say a conceptual mind can be a direct, reliable cognizer? Impossible. But Prasangika is saying, it defines direct differently. Satantrikas define it as meaning free of conception. It doesn't have a conceptual appearance. Prasangikas define it as not depending on a reason or a logical mark. An example of a conceptual, direct, reliable cognizer is the second moment of an inferential cognizer realizing selflessness. So Prasangika said, hey, it doesn't matter that you understand emptiness, and it's not the first moment perceiving it because you had a reason. You're still perceiving emptiness directly at this point. You're knowing reality for what it is, even if it's the second moment onward. Okay, if we're talking in terms of a direct, reliable cognizer of emptiness. Okay. This consciousness is conceptual and correct. It non-deceptively apprehends its main object, selflessness or emptiness, that was ascertained in the first moment of that inferential cognizer. However, unlike the first moment, it apprehends selflessness without depending on a reason. Hence, it is a conceptual consciousness that is a direct, reliable cognizer. Okay? Similarly, the second moment of a mind that directly, non-conceptually knows emptiness is also called a reliable cognizer. But the Satantrikas say second moments are all subsequent cognizers, and subsequent cognizers aren't reliable cognizers. Okay, so it's another difference. Another example of a conceptual, direct, reliable cognizer is a consciousness remembering the table after our visual consciousness saw it. It directly remembers the table that was seen without depending on a reason. For Prasangikas, subsequent cognizers are necessarily direct, reliable cognizers. But remember, the subsequent cognizer has to be perceiving if it's a memory, it has to be remembering correctly. If it's not remembering correctly, it's not a reliable cognizer. unlike Sautantrikas, Prasangikas say that all consciousnesses, even erroneous ones, are direct, reliable cognizers with respect to their appearing object. Now you go, wait a minute. You're telling me that when but when I'm looking at rabbits and I'm perceiving rabbit's horns and I'm seeing turtles on a mustache, yeah, that's just as in existence as mustache on a turtle, and I'm seeing sky flowers, yeah. And I'm seeing weapons of mass destruction in New York. Maybe they're there. They aren't in Iraq, but maybe in New York they have some. Yeah? Isn't that strange? I never thought of that before. Okay. Maybe in Washington, D.C., we also have another weapon of mass destruction. Our mouths are weapons of mass destructions. Yeah? With our mouths, what we say to other people, we can destroy a lot. Okay, but let's stick with rabbit's horns and weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, okay? Okay, those consciousnesses that perceive those non-existent objects are direct, reliable cognizers with respect to their appearing object. Okay? For example, the erroneous conception of a turtle's mustache is a reliable cognizer with respect to its appearing object, the appearance of a turtle's mustache, because it knows the conceptual appearance of a turtle's mustache and can induce memory of it. Yeah? Do you have, when I say turtle's mustache, do you have an image of you in your mind of a turtle with a mustache? That poor turtle. Okay? So it's reliable with respect to the appearing object. It is not a reliable cognizer because it is erroneous with respect to its apprehended object, which is a turtle's mustache, because a turtle's mustache doesn't exist at all. Okay, however, it is not a direct, reliable cognizer in general because it is erroneous. A turtle's mustache does not exist. Okay? But it sounds strange to say that it's a direct, reliable cognizer with respect to its object. Yeah, but when you understand from the Prasangika perspective, well, yeah, it understands its appearing object. Okay, but it's not a direct, reliable cognizer. Yeah. So Prasangika does this stuff to kind of shake us up. Yeah, and it does shake us up. Yeah?
When it comes to the direct perception, realization of emptiness, the path of seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So when one reaches the path of seeing, one directly perceives emptiness. That's correct, right?
Right.
But then when you come out of meditation, you don't see it anymore.
Right.
But then you have a memory of it. Is that right?
Yeah. Your consciousnesses are informed by that prior realization.
So what would that be called then?
It's a mistaken consciousness. When you come out of your meditation, yeah, things are still appearing to you, unless you're Buddha, things are still appearing to you to exist inherently. So you still have that mistaken appearance.
So, okay, so you're not apprehending the object, it's appearing.
Yeah, it's appearing.
Inherently existent.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then with regard to emptiness.
Mm-hmm. But wait a minute. It's appearing inherently existent, but because your mind is influenced. It's informed by that prior mind that was in meditative equipoise on emptiness. Although it's appearing mistaken to your senses, you know it doesn't exist that way. So that is illusory appearance.
Okay.
When we talk about meditating on an illusory appearance.
All right.
Okay? Yeah.
This has puzzled me for a long time. So it makes sense when we talk about a conceptual consciousness. But if we use the example of the table that we spoke about earlier, it says, at the same time, it is mistaken with respect to its appearing object. So I'm assuming that for an eye consciousness apprehending a table, the appearing object would be inherently existent table?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then how do we apply that? Because with the conceptual consciousness, then it knows the conceptual appearance of a turtle's mustache. But what do we say for a direct perception of table that's appearing inherently?
Oh, it knows the appearance of an inherently existent table.
Okay. That's simple. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing when we have a correct reason and a reliable cognizer. So this is quite interesting. We do not necessarily know that a particular reason is correct at the time we state it. Okay? So having a wise mouth doesn't mean having a wise mind. This could happen for more than one reason. For example, weather forecasting involves factual inference. When a weather person predicts that it will be sunny in 3 days, he is doing so based on the data available to him at that moment. Since the causes and conditions influencing the weather can change quickly, it is unsure whether his conclusion will be correct, and even if it is, if his current reason will be the correct reason later on. Because you could have, he predicts sunny weather, but by the time you get there, it could be sunny weather, but not because of the data he had today, but because of how the weather changed the day before you had the sun. Okay? A similar process may occur with a Buddhist practitioner trying to realize emptiness. She may state many reasons to prove emptiness and reach an ascertainment or conclusion, but she is not totally confident in the validity of her reasons. What kind of mind is that? Correct assumption? Maybe doubt inclined towards the correct conclusion? Somewhere between those two. Only later she has a profound realization. Only later, when she has a profound realization, is she confident that her reasons were correct. Okay, so you can have a correct reason, but you might not know it at the time that you have that correct reason. This is not because the reasons were unsound, but because the initial understanding in her mind was not deep. It was a correct assumption because she did not incontrovertibly ascertain her conclusion at that time. Okay, so it was a correct assumption. With continued reflection, a correct assumption can become an inferential cognizer. Although both of these examples involve factual inference in which the person may not be able to ascertain that the reason is correct when stating it, there is a difference between them. The reasons the weather person uses, barometric readings and so forth, could easily change as circumstances change. But the reason the Buddhist practitioner contemplates remains constant. It's just that at her current level, she's not able to completely ascertain the reason as correct. So do you see the difference between those two? One is because the data has changed. The second one is because the ability to comprehend in the person's mind has changed. Okay. Knowing when we have a reliable cognizer is important. For example, when you drive a car and see an animal out of the corner of your eye, you need to find out if that is a direct, reliable perception. If it is, you must brake to avoid hitting the animal. Okay, so it's important to know when we have correct perceivers. When medical researchers conduct trials for a new medication, they need to know that their interpretation of the data is a correct inference, because many people's lives depend on it. So they need to know that their data is correct, and they need to know that their interpretation of the data is correct. Both things. And you find in medical research, it's been coming out now, how people change the data or, kind of finagle it to get the conclusion they want. We may have experiences in our meditation practice, and we need to know if these are reliable cognizers or wrong awarenesses, because that will determine whether we reinforce these minds or counteract them. So if we have a wrong awareness and we think it's a direct cognizer, then we're going to reinforce our wrong awareness. And that's not good news. Okay? If we have a direct, reliable cognizer, but we don't know that we did, like this example of the person who's not, they haven't completely ascertained things, then again, that's problematic. Yeah, we may develop a doubt where it's not necessary. Yeah.
So in Prasangika, the consciousness is mistaken if we view something as inherently existent. So
if it appears.
It appears, yeah. So if like the table in the book, it's a mistaken consciousness for my eyes and consciousness because it looks inherently existent. Is it also wrong consciousness because the engaged object?
No, because the table is a table. The cup is a cup. Yeah. Like I said, if you thought this was a pumpkin and this was an aardvark's back, then you'd have wrong consciousness. So mistaken and wrong mean different things.
Wasn't the definition mistaken is with respect to the appearing object and wrong is with respect to the engaged object?
Mistaken with respect to the appearing object. Yeah, for prasangikas, wrong is respect to the apprehended object.
But when I look at the
erroneous.
book on the table, because I'm apprehending the book to be inherently existent.
Oh, when you're just seeing the book with your eye consciousness, our five sense consciousnesses do not grasp it inherent existence. They have the appearance, but they don't grasp. The mental consciousness grasps. So if you see the book and it just looks like a normal book, you're not grasping at it as inherently existent, then that's not a wrong consciousness. But when you think, this book is so precious and this is my book, then there's grasping at the true existence of the book. And that is a wrong consciousness. Okay? And that consciousness is what leads to attachment. But you see, we're so familiar with all this, we don't even realize that it's a wrong consciousness. Yeah? Okay? So when we are grasping at inherent existence, when that ignorance is manifest in the mind, when it's not just the appearance, but it's the actual grasping, then it's a wrong consciousness. But we seldom recognize it. Yeah. When somebody insults you, even though they're not trying to, but you take it as an insult, and you go, yeah, that's grasping inherent existence. Yeah? The anger that comes up because of that is based on the wrong consciousness of grasping inherent existence. And we can easily see that something's wrong in that consciousness, because if somebody insulted somebody else, we wouldn't get nearly as upset about it. Would we? Yeah, unless it's somebody else we like a lot. But if somebody else who's a stranger, we wouldn't get upset. Or even somebody else we like, we wouldn't get upset in the same way. We'd tell that person, just chill out, that person's projecting, don't take it to heart. But they say that the same words to us. What are you talking about? That is not true. Okay, there you see so clearly the difference between when we grasp it in inherent existence and when we don't. Yeah. But we usually miss it. Tsongkhapa lays out 3 criteria for existent phenomena. So this will help us determine if we have a reliable cognizer or not. Yeah, because we have to perceive something that's existent. So first criteria is the object is known to a conventional consciousness. In other words, some sentient being somewhere knows the object, and has designated it as such and, understands its function. Okay. It doesn't mean that everybody knows it and that everybody agrees. Okay. If it did, then the emperor would really have new clothes. Okay. So it's not depending on popular vote. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's the first criteria. Second criteria is the existence of that object is not invalidated by another reliable, conventional reliable cognizer. Okay, so we look at the cup. Okay, so we look at this. We all kind of say cup. We all have a common definition, what this thing does. Yeah, that's the first criteria. Second criteria is that somebody else's reliable cognizer doesn't contradict that. If somebody came along and said, hey, you guys, this is a pumpkin, we would say, no, that's not validly contradicting this. But if we thought this was a pumpkin, everybody in this room thought it was a pumpkin. And somebody else came along and said, that's not a pumpkin, that's a cup. Then, we would know if we were smart that the cognizer that this was a pumpkin was erroneous, because somebody else's valid cognizer, reliable cognizer, was able to say, no, it's not a pumpkin, it's a cup. Okay? So, in our daily life, we may have certain beliefs, yeah, and we hold them hard and fast. We don't recognize that they're erroneous consciousnesses. Somebody may come up and tell us it's an erroneous consciousness and give us good reasons why it is. And we say, no. No. Yeah. I don't believe your reasons. Okay? If you try to talk to somebody who, remember our guy yesterday who believed that everything is a mystical appearance out of one cosmic substance. Okay? So you meet somebody who really believes that, and they have 10,000 followers. Okay? So, yeah, it's known to a conventional consciousness. But we come along and we say, hey, sorry, not everything is the emanation of, the mystical union, oneness, cosmic substance. Are they going to believe it? Even if we give them reasons, and saying, but, you think that cosmic substance is permanent, and yet everything, it produces everything. Things that are permanent cannot be causes, because to be a cause you need to change, and permanent things don't change. So how can your cosmic substance produce everything? Yeah, that person's going to go, you don't know what you're talking about. There's one mystical cosmic substance, and we're all chips off the old block. Yeah? So, we can laugh at this, but when people challenge our views, we dismiss their reasons, similarly. Yeah, when we're really mad at somebody, and we're certain, we are positive that person said that because they really wanted to deprecate me and embarrass me in front of everybody else. If somebody comes along and says, I talked to that person, they had no intention of embarrassing you, they were just joking. Are you gonna, if you really believe that, are you gonna just give up your anger and feeling of being offended? No. I'm certain they were out to get me. I don't care you said they talked to them. I know their motivation better than they know it, is basically what we're saying. Okay? Okay. So we need to see if the other person's who's contradicting it, if they're having a reliable cognizer. If it is, then the object we're perceiving doesn't exist. Yeah? So if I am perceiving that rude person who is out to get me, who just deprecated me, yeah, and that person didn't have that intention at all, and they weren't being rude, and what they said wasn't deprecating, then my belief that they are this horrible person, that is an erroneous consciousness. Okay? Now, try telling a friend who believes something that they're having an erroneous consciousness, and see what happens. Look what happens if one of your friends, out of total concern for your well-being, tells you you have an erroneous consciousness. Do you listen? Okay. Anyway. Okay. Okay. Then the third criteria for something to be an existent phenomena, it is not invalidated by a mind analyzing suchness. So that's the mind that is analyzing, that this is truly existent. So this would apply, let's say, okay, let's say somebody, will change the situation. It's not somebody who had no intention to deprecate us, but now it is somebody, and that person really, they were jealous, and they really said that because they wanted to embarrass us, okay? So that it's not refuted by a conventional reliable cognizer, because that person actually had that intention. However, our mind that is being offended and angry is grasping inherent existence. So our mind that's offended and angry is not a reliable cognizer, because it's grasping at inherent existence. So even when the person does have the intention to hurt us, still our anger is not justified. Still our anger is a wrong consciousness. Okay, now there's going to be a mutiny. Are you saying my anger is our right consciousness? Even they had that intention. I was right. They really meant that. Yeah. Sorry. It's wrong consciousness. While a consciousness is cognizing an object, it is unable to know if it knows the object correctly. Here, in terms of, its ultimate nature, or even sometimes its conventional nature. Yeah? For this reason, the second person's reliable cognizer, or a later reliable cognizer in your own mental continuum, does not disprove it. Okay? Sometimes, it's, okay, you see, what was that thing? Somebody had a wrong cognizer the other day that was really funny.
Oh, with the
What was
tis on the honey jar?
Yeah, the honey jar. Okay. Yeah, there was another one.
The cow tail? And what's the one?
Oh yeah, there was the cow tail. Yeah, there was still another one. Anyway, if we take the okay. Okay, so in your case, you had the wrong consciousness, the erroneous consciousness to start with, but then it was your own correct perceiver that saw that it was the honey jar. Okay? In another case, you may have had that idea about the sound, and she came and told you about it, in which case it was her reliable cognizer. So it doesn't matter whose reliable cognizer it is. It has your own or somebody else's, but it's there. Okay. Okay. We may apprehend something protruding from a field and think it is a person. However, another person comes along and ascertains that it is a scarecrow. Okay. Third, or you look at it again and you realize it's a scarecrow. Third, a mind analyzing emptiness cannot disprove it. We may believe that inherently existent social castes exist, but a probing awareness analyzing emptiness can negate that. Okay? Conventionally, social castes exist. I'm not saying that is good that we have social castes, but they do exist. Okay? But if we have a mind that's analyzing emptiness, we'll realize that those things don't exist inherently, that they're things that are fabricated by mind. Yeah? Made up by mind. Okay, we'll take a break. Yeah, we didn't get very far. But I think we got far. Yeah? Okay, is this making you think a little bit? Okay, so in your break time, check out your consciousnesses. And, ask yourself which ones are reliable and which ones aren't. And have some discussion about them. And, what's the belief in God? Is that a correct consciousness or a reliable cognizer or not? And if not, why not? And what mind is refuting it? Okay, so talk about this kind of stuff. Okay?